I'm talking today to Shane McLeaod, coach of the famous Black Sticks. You've been there for a while now, Shane. How long since you took over?
Yeah, I started January 2007, so and before that I worked on the program, but more as an assistant coach to Kevin Towns.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about your philosophy towards hockey. What would you say are the critical factors in creating a winning hockey team?
Well, I think there's a few things really. I think creating an environment where work ethic is important. I think that one of the things that probably features in our program is guys that always turn up to major events in good physical condition. They're well drilled. I think that for the players it becomes very much a lifestyle choice rather than making sacrifices to play for their country. And so with that in mind, we're very mindful of the athletes that we look to select. We groom them well, we teach them a lot of life skills as well. So a big part of our program is athlete support, making sure that they either study or they have some part-time work or some other interests outside of hockey, so that at the end of it they come out or we hope they come out a better person.
That's nice outlook. Yeah.
Well, I think for sustainability of players nowadays in the modern game, there's more and more demands on them, and you know they need to be robust enough to handle that. And you see a lot of what we would call hockey junkies that go through programs, and at the end of it, you know, they come out and they're worse off. You know, in the past there has been New Zealand players that have gone that way, but I would like to think that in our generation there's certainly some very talented individuals that are very well rounded.
Yeah. In the modern game, how important is it to have a specialist drag flicker?
Probably too important. You know, I think it's. I think the weighting of that importance is too high in the game. I think that you can go a long way if you have one. You know, the amount of time and energy that gets into building one of those, and we've had to invest probably in time in our program since we've had to produce another 3 or 4 behind that. So we're happy now where it's got to, but it's a long process. And you know, you can play games where you can dominate games and then have a corner or two against you, and you're trailing 2-0 or you lose the game 2-1. So I think it is a misweighting now.
Yeah. We're just coming into the Olympics now. You've obviously got to make selections as time progresses. It always is going to come down to several players, and there's going to be certain ones who make the cut and certain ones who don't. How do you make that final selection? How do you select one player over another?
Well, we've actually done it. So just over the last 2 weeks, that's the process we've gone through. And we were lucky enough to have the Lunch Art tournament there, where we were able to see a final sort of selection of players. And in the end, it comes down to balance.
Yeah.
You know, I think the Olympics strips your team down to the bare essentials with 16. And because of that, you have to be robust in each of the lines. And so, in my mind, I haven't necessarily chosen the best 16 hockey players, but I've chosen the side that is flexible enough to change mid-tournament. It's also a side that, if we face injury, we will be fine. We've got enough cover in the areas that we need. But yeah, there are some unlucky players, and it's, this Olympics is not your time, and I think the next one you'll see the ones that miss out this time really featuring strong in the next one.
So with that in mind, and how do you motivate individual hockey players?
Well, you know, when you get to this level, there has to be a certain amount of self-motivation. You know, it's not an easy job being in high performance. I think it's a very abnormal lifestyle, and one that's not for everyone. And so, in a lot of ways, the players, it may sound a bit cliche, but they do select themselves. You know, it's their choice. In the end, produce the team. We're the guys that name the team, and in a lot of ways, all their hard work and efforts is what puts them in the side and does the selection. So, it's never easy for those players that miss out. But as a coach or a leader of a program, you just have to make sure you take your responsibilities well there, inform them, and in the end, it shouldn't be a surprise. Every now and again, you'll get a bolter come in, but if you're doing your job well, I think everyone understands where they sit in the program.
Okay. Well, you've motivated your players now. Let's talk about the other side of that. Something's not going quite right according to plan as you'd like it to go. How do you then criticise a player?
Well, again, it comes back to that honesty. You just have to present what's going on. We do a lot of gathering of information, player impacting of what a player actually produces in a game. So that takes quite a lot of time, and we have some specialists, people working in the background that help us do that. So, we sit with the players often. We go through their clips. We have key performance indicators that they have to hit in their games, and that's spoken openly with the players, so they know if they're hitting the mark or if they're not, or where the deficiencies in their game is. And when you strip it down to procedures, then it becomes a very easy discussion, rather than being subjective. And I think that's sometimes where coaches can get into trouble, because it's just subjective, and sometimes the emotion of performance or emotion of the game hinders what actually happens in the game, and so we're very mindful of that.
Okay, these days we see players aren't forwards, midfield and full-back in the traditional way that they always used to be. How do you develop that all-round player? We were talking before about people moving through the lines, which you've got to take account of, especially in an event like the Olympics. Yeah,
well, our players are always encouraged to play at least two lines, and you do get some specialists that own a position, but we encourage at club level, also into squad games, that we shift players around. We probably don't do it as much as some other nations such as GB or even Australia, but we are mindful that they need to have a good understanding of not only their position but also the players that they're feeding the balls to and stuff like that. So we do a lot of drills where we put the defenders as attackers and vice versa. But you probably see less changing in our international game with players, so they usually play pretty similar sort of positions. So most of that building of a complete player is done behind the scenes, really.
Okay, during a game, we'll see the instruction coming from the bench for an attacking short corner. Obviously you're nominating which short corner to take. Do you also review the defending short corner and change that as the game progresses? I'm talking live now, rather than just at the end or at the half-time.
Yeah, so we do. Most of our stuff is done behind. We commit one of our assistant coaches. That's one of their main job tasks, and they do a lot of background stuff in that. So we'll go into a game with set plans on both attack and defence. We also have involved the players in that process, and more now, so that they have an intimate knowledge of who's running, what their variations are, who's standing at the top, what are likely corners that are going to happen, both in attack and defence, and that really helps, because then they're the ones that in the end they have to put the mask on and run out, and they need to know what's going on. Even more than we do, so they're very much part of that process, and we find that that's a really effective way to do it.
Yeah. Players on the field, when a player receives the ball, what's the first thing they should do?
Well, they should have already done it. So it's have a plan, really. If you're receiving the ball, you don't know what's going on, you're already behind the game. So we really encourage our players to have forward planning in what they do, so that they know where the next pass is going to go. Helps in setting up. It also helps with the timing of leads, and and all the things based around a game that flows quickly. So yeah, every now and again I'll get caught out, but you'll find that that's often the time where we'll pause and we'll end up going back and setting up something else. So yeah, it should have already been done, to be honest.
Okay, we're talking about pausing and going back, talking about going forward now. Do you have any set rules about when a player should take on the defence? Because at some point in time somebody has to take on somebody.
Sure.
Or do you have a rule that says, okay, in this situation you have to throw the ball back sideways or whatever?
Well, we try and play a numbers game, so the players are constantly looking at where we have a numerical advantage, and it creates the best opportunities for us. But we also, within our group, we have players that have very good elimination skills, and elimination can also be penetrating passes. So, everyone knows the makeup of the game and what we entrust them to do, and then we give them a bit of a license to express themselves, I guess is probably the best term. So some is situational, some is personnel driven as to who we want to really drive going forward. So you wouldn't necessarily see some of our defensive players being instructed to take on players, but you will certainly see some of our key strikers and some of our key midfielders having a little bit of a license to be expressive.
Okay. During recent years we've seen changes almost annually to the rules of hockey. If you could change one rule in hockey, what would it be?
Well, I think the overhead, or the receiving of overhead with a stick above the shoulder, I think it's a pointless rule.